welcome back to the Zen Perry Project. Today we have Lori S. from Acid King. Thank you so much for being here.
Woohoo! Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Of course. We just watched your Hellfest set, and wow, that was really, really good. Y'all were super tight. And yeah, how did that feel being out there? And any thoughts about that? Because we've seen a few other sets, but yours, it felt super inspired. Like there were some moments there where we definitely got some goosebumps. How was
Uh,
it playing out there?
it was, I gotta admit, I haven't watched the video. I'm not a fan of watching my own videos. I don't know if like that's normal or not normal, but yeah, I don't know. There's just something weird about watching yourself play. So I haven't watched it, but I'm glad that it made you feel that way.
Yeah. How was it? How was playing it? How was the whole
It was,
experience?
it was cool. Those kind of festivals can be really stressful because you're basically, at least for us, we flew out there just to play that show. We were just in Europe, like a month ago. So you travel all that way, you're playing on rented gear, you're just up there and it was fun. It was really cool. We had the luxury of a sound check, which is not normal in those kind of festival situations. Usually they just throw you up and you're like playing and you're like, all right, hope everything works.
Yeah.
So it felt good. It was really fun. The crowd was a good vibe. And for anybody that's been to Hellfest, it's just such a special um event. Like we could never have one here in the US. It just wouldn't be possible. So I don't know if you've been or not, but it's like a city. It's almost like well, I know you're in New York, so it's hard for me to think about an area there, but like let's just say in California, you were going to like wine country, right? You're going to go to Napa for wine tasting, and then all of a sudden it's like, welcome to hell. It's just like this, it's like this huge festival in the middle of like where they make Côtes de Rhône, this type of wine, which is a region in France. It's like 3 hours south of Paris. So it's like 40 minutes from the airport. So it's just the whole thing's just doesn't make sense, you know what I mean, to begin with, because the area it's in is really beautiful, small town. But then it just turns into, metal zone. And it is really just its own kind of city, the way it's run. And they just do such an amazing job with the amount of people that show up. So yeah, Hellfest is definitely one of the best. So yeah, good vibe, good people, awesome festival. I think it's probably the best one I've ever played. Top. With festivals, it's just they got it going on. As you can imagine, when you have, I think 6 stages, two main stages, and then four. I can't remember, 4 or 5 alternate stages. Where bands like ours playing thrash metal and punk rock and so forth. Somehow they make it happen.
That's so cool. And I never considered that they wouldn't, or I guess they just line check you at shows maybe before. I didn't consider that, but when you're playing a festival, you really want to like get people's attention. So like not knowing if anything's gonna really work properly is probably pretty scary. But if Hellfest lets you do that,
Yeah, you get a sound check before you go on, which is awesome. But most festivals, nope. I've been thrown up on stage before, plugged in, and you get a line check. You're like, yeah, here's the vocals, and yeah, my guitar seems to work, and hopefully all my pedals and you know what I mean? It's just, you know what I'm saying? I've had it before where I've gotten up and played, and my head just didn't work, just didn't blue fuse. Had to swap it out. So, it's nice to not have to do that in front of a crowd of people that are waiting for you to play. But that's right, that's showbiz.
oh,
So,
maybe.
but yeah, all in all, it's an awesome experience. Um, and I should definitely look at the video.
It was great. It was really good. Well, we saw like we just had Scott Reeder of Fu Manchu on here, also played Hellfest, but they have almost 200 bands there, and considering they're getting some great footage and great video, they're doing a real good service for this
Yeah,
style of music to get out there and like making a place where people can come and it's world known.
Yeah, 100%. That's a separate company. It's like the French, it's a nonprofit art channel that they ask you if you want to be, filmed. Um, so it's not like you have the option to say no. That's why you'll see some bands that don't do it. But probably the bigger bands are like, nope, I don't want you to film me and sell my stuff or whatever it is, their fear of, that kind of stuff. But for bands like ours, I'm like, yeah, I'd love a professional recording, and
Yeah.
video.
Yeah, there's in no way could that usually hurt, you know. But I guess with bigger bands, they have their own squad of people that don't want to put anything out that's not perfect.
Totally.
Yeah, something like that. Um, go let's get into some questions. You've had an epic career creating groundbreaking music. What advice do you have if you could go back in time and talk to yourself about getting into what you do? What advice would you give yourself as starting out in music?
Well, it's so hard now because things have changed so much since I started, with social media and everything. It was a lot harder back in those days. Well, I mean, it's different, harder in a different way. There wasn't that many bands, to compete with. So there wasn't as much, just like with TV shows and everything else. It wasn't completely saturated with a lot of things, but I'm trying to think of what I would do differently. Um, wow, what would I do differently? I maybe would have thought about branding and marketing and that kind of stuff, a little bit more in advance. It was just kind of a free for all with us. I don't know if you noticed, but like basically we have a different logo for every single record. There really isn't any kind of AC/DC logo, Motorhead logo. It's just kind of like there's a classic Acid King logo that's basically a ripoff of Black Sabbath, and then there's like a million different other ones. I've never had a real branded thing that's like Acid King that's used on every record. So I would do that. I would recommend that, bands. You may not think it's important when you're starting out, but it is, believe me, because if you're going to be around for a while, you're going to want to think about your AC/DC logo or whatever your logo is going to be forever.
It is funny that you mentioned that because you do have when you look at all your album covers, it's like it's almost like a journalistic everything it changes slightly each time, but in a way that's really cool because actually not a lot of people are doing that now.
Yeah.
Now
So
I
that
feel like people overthink about branding
Yeah,
sometimes.
so yeah, I guess you're right. I mean, it is nice to have a branding because people recognize that it's you. But this has just been my journey. So now that is my journey. That is my thing to not have one. But it wasn't by choice. It was just I don't know why. I guess I just decided I really didn't like the original logo back then because it was like basically a Black Sabbath ripoff. And I was like, oh, I don't want a Black Sabbath ripoff logo. But that's what it is. So that what else can I say for people? Just if don't give up. Don't nothing happens fast. I've been doing this for over 30 years now. And that is quite a long time compared to, but it just don't stop, and don't, and I'd say like think about why you're doing it. Is it because you want to be popular and famous? Is it because you want to look? Why are you doing this? Are you doing it because you love it and you want to write music and you like to travel and meet like that? That's going to be an important factor in if you're going to be happy and carry on with playing music and figuring out where your place is within the music scene. Because maybe traveling and touring isn't for you, but you love writing music. Maybe you love, so there's different things that for different people. So I think maybe people don't know when they first start a band, what do I want to do, where I want this to go. And then as their journey kind of goes along, they tend to quit because it's not easy. It's like being in a relationship with various partners, right? And it's hard enough with one, let alone two or more. So it's tough. You gotta like have your shit, you gotta have good mental health and good emotional mental, like it's just being in a band has so many different components, writing music, all of the things that go with it. It can be very complicated. So it can be very rewarding, could be very complicated. So just, I think I would, if someone was at that stage, I would say, try to think about those things, as you're going into your journey. Because I learned all of these things along the way, doing this. I just kind of just stumbled along, learning every different, different thing and all the way to bring me to where I am today.
Hell yeah. Well, I have two questions about that. First being, why did you start? Like what about, was it the traveling for you, just making music? What was
Well,
your original reason?
originally when I started even playing the guitar before Acid King even started is and I've talked about this story quite a bit, is back in the day, I had this boyfriend that was in this punk band. I think he's no longer on planet Earth, but his band was called Life Sentence. It was a punk band from Illinois. And before that, he had another band. Anyways, it was like the girls would hang out upstairs while the guys like practiced. And I was like, I don't know. I was like, why? Like this just, I don't know what it was, but it bothered me. So I was like, hey, I just asked him to teach me how to play. I was like, this is kind of lame. Like girls are sitting up there while the guys are, and we're at least listening. The guys have band practice. So he taught me a couple of chords, like the major and minor chords. And I just basically started to play, like never sang, never played the guitar, didn't know anything. And I just started a band with 2 chords, barely. I had to look at my hands. I didn't even know what I was doing, but I basically started a band almost right away called Gross National Product. So that's how I started. That might be a weird, I was always into music. I worked at record stores when I was a teenager. I was going to concerts. I was always into music, but I never played the guitar. So I'd started late, later in life than most people. But yeah, that was it. And I started that band. I started a band, and then the rest is history.
What was the goal?
I don't think I had a goal. I think originally it was just to play, just to learn how to play and have fun. And I wanted to play out. I wanted to play live, and I did want to play live. And then as I progressed and got into my second band, my all-girl band in Chicago, then I wanted to go on tour. That was my thing. First you want to play out live, even though you're not even ready and you don't even have enough songs, and you're not even good enough to play live. And then all of a sudden you want to go on tour, and you're going to book your own tour that nobody's going to come to. And, I booked my own tour, like with cassette tapes and on the phone, right? Like old school. And then after that, you're like, well, we got to go to Europe. I mean, Europe was my goal. So I guess travel, when I look at it, it's not like writing. It's not like my goal was to travel and tour and have the music be the thing that got me there. It kind of goes together. Once you're writing and you get more popular, then you're like, okay, now we have to go here. Now we have to go there. And I've always been that kind of person that's wanted to take the music and use that opportunity to travel, because it's pretty awesome to have those opportunities in life, to get to go to Europe and get to go to South America and get to go to Australia and have somebody else pay for it, a paid trip to another country, where you get to play music and meet people. The whole thing, like, is to me really awesome. And I feel very lucky that I have those opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so cool that it's like one thing always led to another for you. It
Right.
was never like you had a grand scheme. It was just like,
There
oh,
was,
this
yeah.
opportunity might be available. I'm gonna try, and then it worked out.
There was never any plan. There wasn't like, oh, I'm going to become some big rock star. Like that was never even, that still isn't part of my DNA. I just play. It's gratifying to play songs that connect with people, that people like. I really enjoy that aspect of it, meeting people that have found my songs meaningful to them, and that's super gratifying. So it kind of all is connected now, in a way. Yeah. Yeah.
That's so cool. It's a really cool thing to get to look back on and just say you had. We have definitely more questions about that, but you also mentioned mental health and like that being a big thing of why this has always been able to keep on working. You have any tips any tips and tricks you learned along the way?
It's hard because you just, look at, I've had so many band members, and these days I will continue to have various band members. I just think Bassett King will probably be a revolving door of musicians. Um, it's hard, I think, for other people to step in at this point when I've been doing this for so long and they're not on all the other records and so forth, to stick around for any length of time. So I don't look at it. I think back in the day, I was like, oh, the original members and this bond with the band. And that's just not really realistic. And for me, I just decided, well, I'm going to keep the name. It's my name. It's my band. I write the songs. I'm just not going to keep changing the name every time somebody quits. That's ridiculous. So I feel like communication is the biggest thing. The communication is the biggest thing. Check in with your band members. And this is the toughest thing too, because everybody's different in their personalities and some people are not confrontational. But if you're the leader and you don't want like somebody to abandon you when you've got shows booked, or someone blows up in a fiery rage for something they're upset about that you had no idea about, you have to be that person that like checks in with your band members and just takes them out for whatever, drink or not out, whatever. If they don't drink, whatever it is, you go out and you check in with them. How's it going? How are you feeling about being in the band? Are you happy? Is there anything we need to talk about? You just need to check in with people. You can kind of like you can kind of know if something's happening with somebody or if they're unhappy, especially when you go on tour right out of the gate, when you're traveling together in a van and you're with people 24 hours a day for a month, that old saying, you can't, traveling together with somebody, whatever that saying is, but it's the same thing being in a band. It's hard. It's hard to be with anybody, even your significant other in the house, right, all day long, let alone someone that's even not your significant other. So I would say check in and communicate. And if someone's like, hey, not digging the band anymore, I just didn't know how to tell you, it's like a breakup, be okay with that and understand that like not everybody is on your journey. Not everybody is a lifer. Some people I mean, especially for me, when you're in a band I'm doing this for so long, right? After 10 years, people are like, hey, well, maybe I don't want to tour anymore. I've been to Europe 5 times. I'm good. Good. Yeah, I want to buy a house. I'm older now. Whatever it is, they're kind of done with that part of their life. Some people are lifers. I'm like me, I'm doing it forever until I can't do it anymore. Not everybody's going to be like you. And so be okay with that. And like, don't be mad at them, but don't let them get to a place where, that's not communicated and they're miserable. And then you're in an argument and it's horrible. Like, I'd say that's the most important thing for people to, do the best you can to communicate with your band members. Or whatever you want to call them, just to have an honest conversation about how things are going, so you don't get blindsided, and so everybody's kind of happy and on the same path. And people just don't tell you. You got all these different random personalities that come across your path, and you just never know, what's going to hit you.
That's beautifully said. Just as a curiosity, like, we could go for any band member. I mean, usually bass players, and I think you've played with keyboard players at other points, but what do you look for in a drummer? What do you look for in a good drummer? Because you've had some really good ones.
Yeah.
And you have them fill up a lot of space with Acid King. Like,
yeah, really the first drummer really set the tone for the drumming, because he's not a very stereotypical doom drummer, whatever you want to call Acid King these days, stoner rock. I don't know. We've kind of morphed into whatever it is now, but he definitely played a lot of notes, a lot of, we used to call him Amadeus, it's like he just could not, he was not a guy that could just, he had to throw stuff in there, when you're playing slow music. So in a way, it really made us different because of his drumming, right? It wasn't your stereotypical kind of basic drums. So every drummer that's come in has had to like learn his style because and every drummer's like, oh God, this is the weirdest shit. Like, oh man, it's just not. It's just I don't know if you've really listened to Acid King
Yeah.
music or drumming, but it's not. Check it out, and you'll hear some really weird things that just are not normally heard in rock bands. He was very shuffly and so anyways, so every drummer has to learn that stuff, which is kind of either fun for them or not fun for them, however they want to, do it.
Very Mitch Mitchell-y.
Yeah. So it's a feel. So for me, at this point in my career, the current Acid King, at the level that I'm at, you got to be professional. You've got to be professional. You got to bring it. You got to put the effort into, learning all the songs as best as you can to their original ability. But of course, as an individual drummer, you're going to have your own take on it because you're you. So you're going to take whatever the previous drummer did. You're going to play it as best as you can to what you're hearing, and then we're going to play together. You're going to put your own take on it, although it has to sound like the original, and it's a vibe. For me, it's a vibe. It's I don't have to play with the best drummer, the most technical drummer, the most precise drummer. It's more organic, and it's more about the vibe and the feel. And if you don't have that, then it's hard to play an Acid King because it's just not a technical band. It's like, not like Grateful Dead, but it's just more of a groove and a vibe and not, precision.
Yeah.
So it's that to me is the most important thing, and just showing up and bringing it and being professional
Yeah.
and just putting the time into it. If you want to, be in this band, like you have to like put the effort into it to it, to be a part of it.
Yeah. That makes perfect sense. You also mentioned that, I mean, you were the sole writer of, Acid King, and that's been your whole career with this band. What makes you in the mood to write? How often do you write? Like, what does that usually look like for you?
It's different now. It used to be with the band, we would practice together and I'd have some riffs, and then, I'd be like, oh, here's my riffs, and then we kind of play around with it, and the bass player might have something that I play off of, and we kind of write together organically. Now it's not so much. The last record during the pandemic, I wrote with Jason Landry, and I had ideas of what I wanted to do. And then together he kind of helped me kind of shape them, and it was a different process that I'm used to, but I really enjoyed it. I'm not the kind of person that usually writes an entire record and then shows up and goes, here's the record, everybody. Okay, now you're going to play your parts. I don't do that, but I think I'm probably going to be doing that more, or at least I'm going to have some configurations or some more, it won't be so jammy anymore. Like, hey, I got a riff. Let's jam on it for like 30 minutes. And if I can't think of anything else, then I'll drink a beer and then we'll talk about our shitty days or whatever. And then we just, you know what I mean? And then we'll leave. Because there's nothing, you can't be creative all the time. Sometimes you can. Sometimes shit happens, and sometimes it doesn't. Creativity is not easy to do unless you have a patterned band. So for me, usually something that inspires me, and I'll go in and I'll just start playing. And I'll just start recording riffs. And I have probably a lot of riffs. I call them the riff crypt. A lot of them get kicked to the curb, and I just jam, and if I listen to something and I like it, I keep it, I record it, and then I go back to it. And usually the lyrics come last, so I write the music first. So we'll see. It's going to be a different journey for me this time around writing music. So I actually do want to write another record, and I haven't yet. And if you know the Acid King history, there's not a lot of records considering the amount of time the band's been together. I don't write a lot of music. Um, so the last record was written pretty fast for me. It's like a year, I think, that we wrote it, which is like lightning speed in Acid King years. And I think that's just because I had somebody well, first of all, it was the pandemic. We had nothing else to do, and we would just get together twice a week, and it was awesome, to be honest. I miss the pandemic. I miss the lockdown. Those were the good days, good old days. Well, not people dying. That wasn't good, but
Bad, but it was fun. I had some fun. Also, it was like the best of times and the worst of times, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
I'm sure everybody wishes they could go back and get a little bit of money from the government and chill, like read a book that they wanted to, or just watch those shows they never could, you know.
yeah. But yeah, I had all that time to write music, and it was just nice not having any pressure. And not that I ever have any pressure, but when you're working all day or whatever, and then you're going to the practice space, like, okay, I got 2 hours now to be creative on a Monday night. All right, let's go. It's hard to write. So that was me. That was easier. So yeah,
Well,
I
that brings me to a good question. So why? Well, I think it's a great question. That's a weird way to say it. Let me put this out there for you. Why do you think you feel ready to write now?
I feel like when I'm burnt out, I'm playing the same songs, even though I like playing them and I know I have to play them. I feel like I get to a certain point where I'm just like, all right, I need to move on, and I'll pretty much just stop playing. I've done this before. I just stop playing live because I don't want to be a cover band of my own band. And that's just kind of the way it is, because some of the songs I've written are so old. Like I'm doing a Busse Woods 25th anniversary show. That's like the band's most popular record, and I did it 5 years ago, and it was really fun, so I'm doing that again. But I don't mind doing stuff like that. But when I'm continually touring, I'm playing the same songs over and over and over and over again, there is a point where I'm just kind of ready to move on. Um, and so I'm getting there. The new record came out. I've been playing it, it for a while now, and I'll probably play it for a little more while. But I feel already that I'm like, all right, it's time for something else.
Years are turning.
Yeah.
How do you think your writing of lyrics has kind of evolved over all this time? And what is something that you're maybe more interested in writing about this time, or has it mostly been consistent?
Well, originally all the lyrics were about Ricky Casso, the Acid King. That all pretty much that was what most of the lyrics were about back in the day, and motorcycle riding and that kind of stuff. And after like that well dried up, I mean, there's only so many songs you can sing about that. And I moved on, after however many years of doing that with that book, even though that's what the band was named after. Um, I started writing about just kind of various things, more like feeling, not feelings and like, a love song feeling, but just like the feeling you get while you're riding. It's not like I'm riding my motorcycle and, I might write about how I feel about it, the feeling of it in a very kind of, in a way that like you wouldn't know. I've had people come up to me and say, "Oh, those lyrics you wrote like got me through a really hard time," and I didn't have the heart to tell them that I wrote them in my car 5 minutes before we had to record the song. They didn't really have much meaning to them, but the way you sing it makes it feel that way. So if it means something to somebody, then that's meaningful. Sometimes they don't mean anything. Sometimes they do. Sometimes they just make shit up. I don't know. It's kind of all over the place. to
Well, at
be
that
honest.
point, it's like somebody else's song, you know. It's like
Yeah.
it means that much to you. It's like, well, shit, you know.
Yeah, it could be things that I pick up, it could be things that I read, that inspire me. I always keep a mental log, you know, note of things that inspire me like along the way, like middle of nowhere, center of everywhere. The last record I wrote, we were like in Europe and I don't know where we were, somewhere in Belgium, but I have no idea. I don't even know where we were. It was like on a farm. There were like cows, and we were playing at this weird like community center place, but there was all these, stoner rockers there. I told the guy, God, we're in the middle of nowhere. And he said, no, we're in the center of everywhere. And I was like, oh my God. Center of everywhere, like he spun my thing around and I just thought that was an awesome thing. And that, I kept that and it like inspired me to name the record that. So things like that will happen to me where somebody says something or hear something that I think is really cool.
Hell yeah. Do you still have a copy of Say You Love Satan?
I do.
Yeah. So like your OG copy?
I do. Yep. It's all moldy and the pages are off. I think I'm probably pulled them off to make like Xerox copies of them back in the day, like, before we had scanners, fancy scanners or our iPhones, right?
Yeah.
Have to bring it to work and like put it on the Xerox machine.
I'm sure your employers loved that. Yeah.
Do we make
What
flyers? Free flyers.
yeah, there you go. What what do you have to say about that book? How did you end up with your first copy of that book?
A friend of mine still owns this vintage store in Chicago called Shangri-La and had a book rack of like true crime books for 99 cents. Um, and so the book is called Say You Love Satan, and so I always read those kind of books. I was always into um whatever, not necessarily like true crime, not necessarily serial killer and horror stuff, but just more like I always got a kick out of the silly satanic stories, and teenagers on drugs and that kind of stuff. So I picked up the book and I read it, and that's how I got the name because that's what they called Ricky Casa, the Acid King. So that's how I was like, oh my God, this book. It's just like it was basically the Bible for my band. I bought it, I read it, and then I had it for a while before I even named the band Acid King. It was one of those other things where I was like, Acid King. All right, I'm going to name my next band that, which I did, but it was years, later that I did. So yeah, the book is like super cheesy. It's a true story, but the way it's written, trying to make Satan, you know, more popular than Satan needs to be. It's just a fucked up kid on drugs doing,
Was the intention to scare people about that? Okay, that was the intention of it, to try to scare people about the satanic panic.
yeah, they call it the satanic panic. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, okay, that makes a lot more sense. I mean, that's such a cool story. I've not read it. I just read it, heard about it
Yeah.
from her interviewing.
Yeah. Well, since then, there's been a lot of other books. This guy, Jesse Pollock, who did a movie and wrote a book about the acid. So many people have written about it, which is funny because it's such an obscure story from the 80s. It's pretty interesting that it's not like Charles Manson or, it's like this kid from the 80s and there's still books and movies about him. But anyways, he debunked the whole Say You Love Satan book, how David St. Clair, who wrote the original book, was just trying to make money and, trying to, scare people with Satan. And this was the real story. So there's like the version that I bought that I wrote, most of the band and lyrics and stuff about. And then there's like the real story.
Yeah. It's so ridiculous how they did that. Since I did not live through the satanic panic, but what is there any similarities you see with the satanic panic from back in the 80s to stuff today? What do you think what do you think scares those sort of people today, like the satanic panic? Is there anything that comes to
Um,
mind?
I don't know. It's just now with social media and just the fact that everything's out there for everybody to read and see. I don't know if it's I think it just depends on where you live and if you're in a small town and never leave, like my, significant other's mother who like lives in a small town and just barely travels, hangs out with their church people. Like I could see that group of people still being like scared about that kind of stuff potentially. But the fact that like, there's so much information out there and you can get it whenever you want. They're probably not as, they're probably desensitized to it all, I would imagine, to a bit. So I don't think that could really, if that story came out now, I don't think it would even make any kind of significant dent in the news.
Yeah. There's just so much crazy shit we're bombarded with every single day.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of like, okay, I just don't, it would not have like this life that it still has all these years later.
Yeah, it's interesting because that kind of was your branding for everything at first, of like kind of this ridiculous like one-off like freak story.
Yeah.
And how scared people got about it. That was the point of asking, which, in itself is branding. In the Busse Woods, it even kind of looks like a true crime picture.
Yeah, and Busse Woods isn't. That was just my teenage hangout, which is very
Yeah.
similar. I saw similarities in the story of Ricky Casso as I did at minus killing and crystal meth and stuff like that, but which wasn't part of my time my childhood. But hanging out, like having that hangout spot, like that was Busse Woods. That was our hangout spot. That's where people sold drugs, and people blasted Black Sabbath, and it was like the hangout place back before, that's what we did. That's what we did. We didn't have video games. We had whatever. We'd play like Space Invaders or whatever, back then, whatever the video, we just hung out and got stoned. That's what we did in the 70s. And that's what they did. They had this gazebo place that they hung out, or Azteca Woods. That's where they hung out. It was there. Everybody, I guess, if you hung out back in the 70s, had their Busse Woods, whatever it was. Doesn't have to be the woods, whatever their hangout place was. So I saw the correlation to that in my life. Oh yeah, the teenage hangout place.
Where anything could happen.
Yeah.
Um, what kind of got you fascinated with like dark stuff and growing up? Like, when did you start turning towards this? What was your family life like in that sort of way? Were your parents stoked that you're doing music and getting into this sort of stuff? Like,
Well, I didn't get into it till much later, so by that time I was pretty much out of the house. But I just, typical upbringing. My mom and dad were divorced early on, before like it was cool to be divorced. That's kind of funny to think about now. But yeah, suburban kid, pretty much grew up on my own. My mom worked, so we just kind of could do whatever we wanted to. We kind of had the ideal childhood. We could do whatever we wanted because the mom was never around. So I did whatever I wanted to. But I didn't get into music until later. My mom, I think she just thought it was a fad and a trend and wanted to know like when I was going to grow up, and I was like, well, probably never. I guess if you're looking at it from that aspect, a grown up thing, like you're going to grow out of it or whatever. I grew into it. I wasn't until I was 19 that I even started to play in a band or learn how to play the guitar. So I was late to the rockin' game. So yeah, I don't, now she's totally into it,
oh hell
uh,
yeah.
yeah, I think she might even come. It's like she might even come to see us in Chicago, but it's like you want your like 86-year-old mother like staying out till midnight on the south side of Chicago. It's like a little
Weed
worried.
blowing in the face, like
Yeah, I'm like, oh, mom, we'll have to get you a driver. So I don't know. we'll see. But she's thinking about it. She's thinking about it. But now she's totally into it and she's excited. And it's the whole story is flipped now, telling her friends about me and the band. And the whole story has flipped from like, like looking at it like it was just this waste of time to like now telling people about my daughter, the
Playing
rocker.
Acid King. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of how that would that go? We'd go over at the crochet table or whatever, you know.
Totally. Yeah. The cards, ladies playing cards.
That's so cool. I love to hear that. Yeah, I'm stoked for your mom. Your mom sounds sick.
She's cool. Yeah.
Um, I have a picture to show you, and I kind of want to talk about Man's Rune Records and kind of the
Wow.
start of that all. Anything that comes up to mind when I show you
Oh,
this?
yeah. Frank Kozik. Yeah.
It
R.I.P.
was it.
Kozik. Yeah.
Right.
Those are, yeah, those were really good times back in, when we first started and the first record label we were on was Sympathy for the Record. There wasn't really anywhere for our band. Like there wasn't any labels, and you have to like remember too, depending on how old you are and when before social media, there wasn't that many record labels. There wasn't a Bandcamp. You just couldn't record your own band easily on GarageBand and like put it on Bandcamp. Like that didn't exist, right? So record labels, right, were just made for bigger bands that were going to make a lot of money. And then there was independent, there were punk labels, but what the genre of music I think that Acid King started to play didn't really have one. It was kind of like like Monster Magnet, Caius. Well, they kind of had the desert moniker. Um, and then Sleep came out, and there was kind of like, what are these bands and where do they fit? And there wasn't really a label to fit them in. So Sympathy for the Record Industry was kind of like this junk label, like that every band, like he just, put out everybody's bands. There wasn't really any kind of genre specific. And then Frank came along and he really, he had already put out some 7 inches in Austin when he moved to San Francisco. He really embraced this kind of music and he kind of gave everybody a home. I mean, the music's still a little different. It's not like all the bands are exactly the same, but it was kind of like a home for bands that had no home, that had no, that misfit genres that didn't have a place yet. And he created a whole thing, which is just awesome. It was really special. You had your record, you had this amazing artist. He'd have these big shows at the Troubadour Mandarin showcases. He'd go to, fly us to Austin to play South by Southwest. Like it was such a great time. And and just nice to have it just brought all these bands together and it was really fun. And of course, you got amazing posters and artwork out of the deal.
How did this artist like? How did he? Was he able to do all this stuff with a label?
Well, he did it all himself, made his money selling posters and art in other ways. And then he just loved music. So he created this label and started putting out bands, which, he wasn't let's just say he wasn't a great financial business person, which he ended up, filing bankruptcy because he overextended himself and put out too many things that he couldn't afford to put out at the end of the day. You know what I mean? So that was part of it. There's more to the story, but he ended up having to, file bankruptcy for that. So that was the end of that whole thing. It happened rather abruptly. But I think also it was also probably time. It was kind of at the end of that, wave where more record labels were coming out now. So you had different, record labels that were kind of picking up where he left off. Yeah, so that was definitely a good special time. And so he definitely paved the way for others to kind of step in. And now, as you can see, there's so many more record labels, Heavy Psych Sounds and Blues Funeral and TP and, all of the other ones that have come around or stayed around or gone out of business or whatnot. And of course now you don't even need to have a record label. You can just record music and put it on Bandcamp and
Way you go.
yeah, you don't need a record label.
And is that a general like sentiment that you hold? Well, I don't want to get too far into that because we've got in trouble asking some musicians about this. Um, is there? Let's just move on. Is there? What was it like with kind of the rock revival happening, where people were trying to get away from the '80s music, and grunge coming about? What was that? Was that time a really exciting period in your life? What sort of things do you remember about seeing that the cultural shift was moving towards this, like more back to like rock and roll with
Yeah.
some extra, fuzz in
Yeah.
it?
I know what you're saying. I mean, I never really got into like glam rock. I kind of missed that whole thing. I was into like I was a 70s rocker, and then I was like a super punk rocker, like a English British punk rocker into Buzzcocks and that kind of stuff. And then I really got into punk rock with my old boyfriend, and then hardcore Chicago punk rock, all of that kind of stuff. Um, and then I started my own punk band, and then I kind of came back to, and then make alternative music or whatever, the Replacements or whatever you, I don't even know what you call that, those kind of bands. But and then I just kind of came full circle back to classic rock. Um, I can say for me, what kind of like bridged my gap between punk rock or punk pop, whatever I was kind of playing at that time, was two things. One was Sub Pop. Sub
Mhm.
Pop was huge. Like the minute like Mudhoney came out, and like Big Muffs and Fuzz and Wah Wah Pedals and Screaming Trees, I was like, what is this? I remember sitting in the car listening to a Screaming Tree song like on our college radio station. And I was like, I had to sit in the car and wait for the DJ to come on, to say what song that was. So like that back in those days, like that was like, I never heard anybody doing that before. Yeah, you had Blue Cheer or whatever, but like that was old. There was anybody new doing, no, nobody was playing with. So that kind of music really changed me, and I opened my ears up to like different stuff.
Quick question: have you ever met Mark Lanigan?
I did.
I would love to hear about him because quite an interesting fella, and I'm a huge fan.
Yeah, me too. I know that was sad. So I feel like that's when I kind of saw the change. Obviously, when Nirvana, I mean, we played with Nirvana back in the day before they were popular, and nobody came to their shows. I think to me, I mean that's when I kind of saw the change. That's when you saw like hair bands kind of changing and rock changing a little bit, and not having to be these big huge arena rock bands anymore. You could have Smashing Pumpkins and stuff like that. So definitely changed, I think, in the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah. What was the any you have any memories of Mark meeting him or anything like that? Just
Yeah, he was like I was like my all-girl band played with them in Chicago, and I was a huge fan, and it was super awkward. You know what I mean? Like
sounds about right.
he was not into like people like me, I mean, I didn't, we were backstage, and I can't even remember what I said. I talked to him for a little bit. I think I was putting on lipstick. It was something really dumb, and I remember feeling really embarrassed about the whole interaction. And I think I just went and hid in my dressing room after that. That was my Mark Lanigan moment.
That sounds
Yeah.
about right. I
Yeah,
read his
like I was
biography.
really intimidated, and he just seemed like, I don't know, like I just felt like I was too stupid and young, and like for him or something. Like I couldn't raise up to the coolness factor, or who knows, maybe he was completely fucked up on drugs probably. But to me, like I
Yeah.
didn't even know what to say. It was like Henry Rollins. I'd probably say something really stupid to Henry Rollins. Like, I just it was intimidating.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Star Trek, and also, yeah. From what I've read about that guy, when I read his biography, he was not a super nice dude, just in general. Not a very like he wasn't known for being warm-hearted and welcome.
Exactly. And that's was the case. He was nice to me, but I just felt like kind of like an idiot, I couldn't, there wasn't anything right I was going to say to like strike up any kind of conversation. So I just kind of like got out of there.
Yeah, I totally get it.
I'm like, I'm just going to be a fan out here in this new audience. So, and then we got to play with them. I'm a huge fan. I've been a huge fan forever, and I've seen him perform pretty much every time he's come to San Francisco. And actually, Ashley King got to play with him in, let's say, 2018 or 20. It was one of the last Stoned and Dusted shows in
Oh, yeah.
Joshua Tree, and it was really cool. It was just awesome. Yeah, I was like, oh my God, I can't believe we're getting to play on the same show. I
Yeah,
didn't get to talk to him. He kind of came in with his posse, played, and then out of there. So there wasn't a hanging out, going, hey, remember back in the day when I like said something really stupid and you looked at me like I was an idiot.
well, I'm sure you would have appreciated that. Yeah. What was the move to the Bay versus like LA or New York? What was that about?
Um, I think yeah, I lived in Chicago,
Mhm.
my my whole life, and I don't know, there was something. I came to San Francisco to visit. Well, we played here. My all-girl band played here a couple times, and I loved it here. I don't know what it was. I fell in love with the city. Tattoos and motorcycles, and I loved the clubs, and I met nice people, and I don't know, there was just something about San Francisco that I just like, that drew me to the city, and I was like, I want to live here. So that was it. It was as simple as that. I just decided that I was going to move here. Bam.
That
That was it. No job. Didn't really have any fight. Like one friend, maybe two. I didn't really, know that many people. And I just left my life. I moved here
there you
based
go.
on based on I thought it was cool.
Yeah. And,
I
and
wouldn't move here now though, to let you know that it's not really that cool anymore. No.
I was living in Santa Cruz the last 7 years before here, so yeah, that stuff has changed a lot since when I was growing up too. So yeah, it just is what it is. But
Yeah.
still, I mean, it's still beautiful around
No,
there.
I love it. I do love it. And oddly enough, the pandemic has like kind of almost, it's changed it so much in a way that's almost reverting. I don't want to say it's like back to the way it was, because it's certainly not, but it's definitely getting there. It's like there's bars that opened up in the Mission, like a rock bar that's like having bands, and like I'm like, what's happening here? I mean, they all went away. Nobody could afford to do anything. Now X Twitter is leaving, thank goodness. So it's like all of the tech companies abandon the ship here, and there's all these vacancies, and it's just kind of like, being forced to change. It has to change. We don't have that money and those people anymore, and it's just like they came in and ruined the town.
You know, it's
And
kind of crazy.
and
I
then they
know.
left, and they're like, here's your town. That it's such a weird thing. So those of us that are still here, there's a couple of us that are still actually that live in San Francisco, that have rent control and been able to still live here. That are kind of like, wow, this is kind of awesome.
It's like a modern day Detroit. I just realized, which like the tech companies abandon it. Like Oakland's kind of no. I have friends that live out there, and every single time I go on Instagram, somebody has another GoFundMe up because their car got something
Yeah,
stolen out of it.
Oakland's like in horrible shape. I feel so bad for Oakland. I
Same.
mean, I feel really bad. San Francisco is not like Oakland, for sure. There's of course crime like there is everywhere, but it's not like it is in Oakland. It's definitely it's just really sad to see that town, you know,
Yeah.
for sure. But San Francisco, yeah, I wouldn't say it's exactly like Detroit. Maybe Oakland is more than Detroit, but more like San Francisco. But I could see the similarities for sure. Where people came in and just like the politicians injected so much money and invested so much into that particular crowd and forgot about the rest of us and small businesses. And then those people just got up and dumped on it and left. And then there's like those little of us that are left, like, okay, we're still here. And they're like, oh yeah, you guys, you small business owners that can't do business anymore because The rents are so outrageous, right? And you can't like charge $50 for a cup of coffee to pay your $10,000 a month rent for your coffee shop. So we're seeing a reverse of that now, and I love it's awesome.
Yeah, I'm hoping that stuff changes. I mean, no matter what, something's gonna budge in everywhere. That's kind of the way I see it. I don't know how that's gonna go, but something's gonna happen. So, well, let's talk about what you got going on. You got some shows. You have Beyond Vision was released last year. You have some shows, Chicago, Providence, Philadelphia. You're playing DesertFest here in New York City,
Yep.
which should be awesome. What else do you have coming up for Ask King?
That's it. We've got like 6 shows for 2024, and then that's going to be a wrap. So going to Chicago at the end of August, just for fun. Reggie's asked us if we wanted to play, and I'm like, who am I to turn down a paid trip in my hometown to hang out with my friends, Not me. I'm always going to say yes to that one.
Fine.
So that'll be fun. Um, so we got asked to play the New York Desert Fest, and we haven't been to the East Coast since 2019. Yeah, 2019. Haven't played. I haven't really, unless you're flying the band out, the band doesn't really tour because it's just so much money to tour in the United States. Like to get a van and hit the road. I just haven't done it. So there was an opportunity, and I thought, well, let's see if we can play a couple of other shows before and after. We can share gear with some other bands, and so we ended up being able to do that. That's why we're playing just these random shows, around that. It's not really a tour. We're flying in, and then we're meeting Hippie Death Cult to play, and Cadabra to play in Providence in sharing their gear, and then we're going to Philadelphia and playing with Heavy Temple and Truck Fighters, and sharing their gear. So that's how that kind of worked out, and then we'll play the Desert Fest and go home.
Love to see that everybody's supporting each other. Just I want to get some good bands out there, and you don't need two drum sets. Yeah,
That's yeah. So, it's just that's how that happened. So I'm glad I was able to do some shows on the East Coast, finally
for
five
sure.
years, 5 years later. And then doing 2 hometown shows in November at the Chapel, which is right down the street from my house. So they asked if I wanted to they wanted me to do 2 shows, and I was kind of like, 2 shows? That's like too much. That's one too many shows. We're not, my band's not that popular. But I got talked into doing it. So I said, fuck it. So I curated 2 different nights, and actually I'm really excited about it now. The first night's going to be with Early Moods, who I love. They're like, they're like the Frederick, Maryland of East LA. They're like, classic doom from LA, young guys playing like pentagram classic doom, and I love them so much. They're great. And then Castle Rat, who I don't know, but they're got a super buzz.
We've
And
seen them. They're awesome.
so you probably know them, but they haven't toured, and like the medieval doom, I don't know, fantasy doom.
Well, they're gonna put on a show. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah, so yeah, she's like Conan, the female Conan. So they've got their shtick, which definitely I do not. So that'll be fun for everybody. I'm always up for a good shtick. Yeah,
Good.
you know, I
Yeah, they were fun. I think me and Michael here were very on edibles at Desert Fest, and we saw them, and I was like, "What the hell is going on? This is
yeah.
sick." Yeah, it was.
I embrace it, so that's going to be really fun because I know people are excited to see them. So that was a chance to have that because they're touring together. And then the next night I'm doing a Busse Woods 25th anniversary show where we're playing the whole record in its entirety. And I've got these local bands, Broom, Brume, who are friends of mine, and they have a new record out this year, and they really wanted to play the chapel. That's a hard place to play unless somebody asks you, if you're not like at that level to headline. So I was like, I know they really want to play. And then there's this new band called Cassette Prophet, and it's basically, Mike Moraski from Steel Pole Bathtub and Noah from Neurosis. It's Mike's band. He put it together. It's hard to even explain what it is, but it's basically like a whole story written about some lost tapes from Radio Shack. It's almost like it's a story. So the songs all have a story to them. It's not just like a band playing. He tells a whole story, and there's little in between. There's video recorded tapes of that take you on a little adventure along the way. And they're fun and interesting, and they're definitely not like the same kind of music, but I wanted to curate kind of two different nights, so it wasn't like if people wanted to come both nights they could, but if they didn't, it'd be kind of two different crowds in a way.
It's a Acid King Fest.
I just have all the bands I wanted, basically. If
That's
I
so
was,
cool. Yeah.
yeah.
So whoever let you, whoever's idea was to, get you guys to do that, like it makes a lot of sense when you explain it, because that sounds awesome. Also, probably a ton of work to do that, put that together.
Yeah, well, I had to really think strategically about, okay, if I play two shows, how am I going to get people to come to two shows, right? In a row, right? So like I really had to think like it can't be the same. It can't be the same thing. It has to be something different. It has to get people that are like, should I go to one or the other? Or maybe I'll go to both, you know? So we'll see. I'll let you know after the shows what happens.
Oh yeah.
But I'm looking forward to it no matter who shows up, because it's all bands I want to see, and that makes it fun for me, just to play with friends and have
Yeah.
fun.
Well, we'll do what we can to get our Bay Area people out there, because we would go to that. That sounds sick.
Yeah, and the chapel is just a really cool place. It's a good vibe, and people want to go there. It's not like a lot of clubs we play at, majority of them are just your black painted rock club. You go in, everything is black. You got your shitty toilets, you know what I mean? Like you're just used to getting like the worst of, the bare minimum, the whatever. And so this is it's a nice place that people want to go to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. Well, we have a question that we always ask every single person on this show. And there's lots of different answers, and answers how you might. Do you experience imposter syndrome? If so, how do you approach it?
Meaning like when someone tells me how meaningful my song is and I wrote it in 5 minutes in my car, and then I have to pretend that like it's super meaningful.
They're just feeling like you're not supposed to be where you're at, and like somehow you got here, and like you feel like it's gonna
Yeah,
fall
I
out from
mean,
underneath you.
it definitely feels weird at times, at Hellfest when people, I guess I don't see myself as that person, ever. Even when people come up and ask and go, "Oh my God, are you Lori from Acid King?" Like when I'm just having a drink, I'm like, "Yeah, that's me. I'm just the person here." Like I never think of myself as that person, and I just, I still don't think of my person that got flown out to play Hellfest, right? Supporting Fu Manchu. Like, how awesome is that? Like, I guess I just don't even think of myself as that person. I can't, I just, for some reason, which I guess is good. I don't want to think too highly of myself here. So I don't know if I have imposter syndrome. I
Or
just
just that
kind
you ignore it. You just they're yeah.
Yeah, I just kind of live my life, and I guess I just do what I do, and I always look at myself like I'm the same person that started my band. Like, and even though, I'm like here instead of here now, for some reason I just don't see myself as this person. So I don't, I feel like I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. And yeah,
Staying in the moment.
yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
love it. Well, Lori, it's been such a pleasure. Thank you for taking the time to do this. You're rad as hell, and cannot wait to see you when you come out to New York City.
Yeah, looking
Uh,
forward to it. You gotta like kind of come and introduce yourself.
yeah, of course. It's always a fun time there. So, yeah. Anything else you want to tell the fans? Anybody listening?
No, I think they probably know a lot more about me and King than they did however long we've been speaking now. So yeah, I think like we're good.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much. Yeah, from me and Michael here, and yeah, it's been Zen Perry Project, King, Lori,
Sweet.
forever. Thank you so much, and we'll be in touch.
All right, over and out.
Have a good night.
You too.
Hey, for the love of God, please subscribe to our Patreon for like $1 a month. That would help out a lot. Podcasts are, fun fact, really expensive to run, and I really enjoy doing this. So if you want to keep on seeing stuff like this, help me out. Also, like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff, and I really hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time.